Hello, welcome to the September 13th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test on my end. We'll make sure everything is coming through fine as expected, and then we will go ahead and begin. Bear with me just for a moment. Hello, welcome. Okay, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. And if you have not attended a Club Cubase live stream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor for Steinberg products. So I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. area. And if you're watching the live stream live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And when asking questions in the chat, if we could specify which level of Cubase you're running, so whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist Pro, or other Steinberg programs, which version number, so if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system, whether it's Windows or Mac OS, that would be helpful. We should have an index of all the topics covered in the live stream pinned to the top of the comments field later tonight. I'll have to go through and watch the live stream. I'll take a dinner break, watch the live stream again, and type up all the questions. And if you wanted to search for questions that have been answered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm excuse me, I'm just going to turn my phone off. Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website, and it's a wonderful resource. We have two people that serve as moderators on the live stream. So we have Jazz Dude and Agent K. They're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this to make it a better community. So we want to give special thanks to them. And Jazz Dude's also involved with the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. He spends a lot of time compiling information, so he will get two special thanks again for that. When asking questions, again, if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could try to avoid asking the questions repeatedly, that would be appreciated. That way, just kind of speeds up everything. Sometimes I may be 20 to 30 minutes behind, but we'll try to go through all of them. And if you see that maybe I have missed your particular question, like if you see ones before and ones after, we've had a couple of people whose questions don't get posted for some reason, then it's okay to do that and post your question again. So let's go ahead and begin. All right, so we have a question from VTS404. While doing the folder track coloring, is there a way that if I put a track into a folder, it will automatically color change to the folder track's colors? I don't think that there's a preference for that. You know, one thing that you could do is just simply select, the folder tracks here, the folder and its tracks. And if you go to select a color tool, you could adjust the colors accordingly here, like so. So you could do that. And I think if we have Midi tracks, if there's kind of a strange anomaly with it. So you could change multiple colors quickly, but let's say if I add a folder track, so let's say we add our folder track and I want this color to be yellow. And now if I think if we add instrument tracks, that these may assume the color. So that will assume the color, and that is contingent on a preference, where if we go to your Cubase preferences, to use the previous track's color, so you could have it set up for there. But a lot of people will want kind of like, you know, if they've gone through and set up individual colors to maintain those colors even when within a folder track. But if not, you know, try just to select the folder track and all the other tracks, and at this point select the color tool. Looks like the little paint can, and then you could choose your color accordingly. So, and I think if we do this in this manner, so say if I go to add audio tracks, that maybe audio tracks don't carry over the colors. We'll see. Yeah, so audio tracks may not carry over the colors the same way instrument tracks do for some reason. All right, I'll just revert this. Let's take a look. All right, so next question. All right, so we see Peter checking in from Montreal. Thanks for joining us again, being a loyal attendee. All right, so we see Langsalot just saying hello, Greg and everyone. Happy to be in this wonderful stream again, surrounded by amazing people. We're glad that you could join us. And his question is, when I have multiple empty parts and I want to navigate between instruments by up and down arrow, it jumps only to a track with events. How can I change this? Okay, so let's say I have an event selected here, and I use we'll just hide this. All right, so if we have event selected and I arrow down, it'll go down to the next event. But if you want it to actually go to the particular track, instead of selecting the events, select the track. And now that the track is selected, and let me just preference that could affect this as well. Okay, so you can say use use up-down arrows for selecting tracks only. So now, as soon as I have my tracks, I can just simply select. So let's see, if I come and I have an event selected, I can now just have this on tracks as opposed to the events. So check this preference, and it's under editing. Use up-down navigation commands for selecting tracks only, and then that will automatically go to the tracks. But if you have only tracks, you know, if we have only events selected, then at that point, let's see if we come here. Yeah, so just try that particular preference. So use up-down navigations for tracks only as opposed to events. And now we could select tracks that have no events on them. So all right, so we see Lauren Vignette says, I'm still using Cubase 8. I suppose I should update eventually. So currently there's a 40% off promotion to upgrade to Cubase 12, even from Cubase 8. So now is a good time if you want to do that. But obviously Cubase 8 works great for a lot of people still. All right, so we have Giuseppe Mazza says, hi, new to Cubase, but enthusiastic. Nice to meet you all. Greetings from Rome. So thanks for joining us and being a part of the live stream today. Glad you could join us. I got to go to Rome. Had a wonderful time. All right, so we see Benny checking in from Sweden. We have Jan from Stockholm of CubaseIndex.com fame. All right. All right, so we see, hey, from Chris Hallam from Athens. I know about the auto-fade and crossfades panel, but is there a way to have a crossfade automatically appear whenever two audio regions are overlapped? So it says, my understanding is that the auto-crossfade feature doesn't actually display the crossfade lines as one would see when dragging the regions over one another and pressing the X key. So it's not going to do an auto-crossfade unless it, you know, where you see it visually unless you actually hit the X key. You know, there's some different editing tasks where you may not want a crossfade for very quick transitions, but if you have two events that are overlapping that you want to see visually, you just need to hit the X key to do that. And we can think of the auto fades as just kind of playing back a crossfade without having to worry about what the actual crossfade is doing or anything like that. So it's just kind of a turn it on and then you don't have to worry about it. All right, so we have the Cube, and Michael's saying hello from San Diego, and Robbie Bowling, a longtime loyal attendee from Dallas. I hope you're well, Robbie. Thanks for joining us. And Damon from Austin, Texas. All right, so we have Punk Rock Pete from Austin, Texas joining as well as John Shaman. Okay, so we see a question from the Cube. How much more does Nuendo have over Cubase Pro 12 besides Dolby Atmos? And can you make all the same songs in Nuendo's Cubase? So, Nuendo has some more extensive Dolby Atmos, but Cubase 12 does feature Dolby Atmos for music production. So you can do that, but Nuendo 12 is also going to offer more like functionality for like ADR functionality. So if you're doing dialogue replacement for films, there's some additional sound design plugins like the randomizer, the voice designer. So some really great plugins for that capability. It's also going to have a lot of game audio capabilities for interacting with Wise, which is a popular game audio middleware. It'll have, so it's going to, for music production, I think Cubase would pretty much have all of the needs. Is when you get into like very specialized, I need to reconform a post-production thing, where you're mixing not only the music, but, the dialogue, all the sound effects, and all that, synchronized to picture. That's where Nuendo is really helpful. Or I'm, creating 17,000 different, sound design wave files for a game where every footstep has to be slightly different. Nuendo is like really good for that particular thing. But for music production, I think that you'd find them identical. So. All right, so we have Orange Clock Productions checking in from Chicago, Illinois. Thanks for joining. Miss going out to Chicago. All right, we have Zounds by Timo, just saying greetings to everyone. All right, and we have Mopman checking in from Maryland, not too far from me, in Alexandria, Virginia. Okay, so we see from the Cube, trying to make 5 new useful presets per session in Cubase. What is the best way to organize presets in the logical editor presets? And will newer versions of Cubase add new useful presets? So there's a whole slew of new logical editor presets that have come inside of Cubase 12 for the logical editor or project logical editor. So once you're working, and kind of the preset management has also been enhanced to make it a bit easier. So when you go to, didn't like that. All right, show this one more time. So when you actually go to so when you go to the preset area, you could actually have it take you automatically to the new presets. I'll just get this open quickly here. Sorry about that. So as soon as we go to, let's say, our project logical editor, and we go to apply, it's probably my security software for my IT department. It just got updated. It's causing me all sorts of issues here. All right. All right, so as soon as we come over here, you'll see show user presets location. And here you could now have, like within the logical editor, you could have different folders open. So if you wanted to just come over here and organize different folders, so this will immediately take you to the project logical editor or the logical editor. And here you could have your own folders, created subfolders, and organize the presets. So, but there are significant amounts of new presets for the logical editor and project logical editor in version 12. All right. Okay, so I see a question. How do I adjust my key editing window? It's white, which is fine, but buttons are also light. So at night, I can nearly see it in preferences panel as well. So if you wanted to change kind of like the key editor window, let me just... Okay, so let's say in our key editor window, if you wanted to change different settings there, what you could do is, where you can find that is if you go to preferences and go to user interface to color schemes. So here we could actually just say editor area background. So if you wanted to darken it up or lighten it up, we could just adjust kind of here. So that's where we could change kind of like the key editor background area. So let me know if that is helpful. I'll just apply my default here. Okay, so we see a question from Magno Jenga. I'm thinking about buying a MIDI controller. I already have a keyboard, but I think it's better to buy a small MIDI controller. I don't know. You know, so your small keyboard, as long as it has like a USB or MIDI output, and if you have a MIDI interface like on your audio device, you know, that will work for inputting notes. You don't have to buy a small MIDI controller. Why sometimes people buy small MIDI controllers is one, so it could fit on a desk. And two, if you wanted to use other knobs and sliders to control different parameters, you could do that with a small MIDI controller if your keyboard doesn't have that. But, you know, I don't think, you know, if you're happy with how your keyboard feels and plays and has enough knobs and sliders that you want to utilize, then you could just simply use your keyboard. You don't have to buy a new one, but it's always fun to get a new toy. All right. So we have Helmut Heimer from Austria. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we see from the Cube, working in Cubase Pro 12, forgot how to expand the number of colors you can use. So if we come to the project, and let's go to the project colors setup. At this point, when we go to presets, we can see, okay, I want to see the number of basic colors. We could say I want 32 basic colors, and I want 4 color tints. So now we could just adjust right there. So go to the project menu to project to the project color setup, and then you could just change right here. So we can see, I think it goes from 16 and 1 by default, and then you could add more just like that. So let me know if that helps. All right, and Magno Jenga is happy to join again. We're glad that you could be here. All right, so we see Jersey Boy Beats as looking to switch from Studio One. So yeah, I think that's Cubase is a great solution for you. So, and we hope you switch. And anytime that you have questions, we do these live streams twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. So feel free to join us and ask any questions that we could help you in your switch to Cubase. All right, so we see Michael Pierce is joining from the studio. still in his control room. He's mixing some Christmas big band music, and he's going to be lurking. Today's competition is between a car horn or Barry sax. Yeah, so I always find it interesting. You know, I used to always be in Nashville in the summer, and you'd be there. It'd be like I remember one day it was like 108 degrees and going to 3 different studios, and you walk in and it's all decorated for Christmas because everyone's working on their Christmas albums in July. So they put up all the Christmas decorations and start playing Christmas music to get in the mood. So, but yeah, we hope your sessions go well. All right, and we have Brian Sawyer checking in from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us. So I see a question from Robbie Bowling. Says, just upgraded from 11 Pro to 12 Pro. Do I really need to download everything or just certain things? So there's not a lot of new content between 11 and 12. So let's say if we come over to the Steinberg download assistant, the things that I would get, you know, there's probably going to be a later version of Spectral Layers 1. I would get the latest versions of Groove Agent, Pad Shop, Retrolog, and Halley and Sonic SE, because I think those were updated for new functionality. So, and I'll just open up the download assistant and we'll take a look. But I think a lot of the sound sets and content sets are still there. So I would probably get, you know, see which version of Spectral Layers you have, which Halley and Sonic. So I would probably do these core things here. And one of the things that's going to be new for instruments in version 12 is going to be Verve, which is kind of a really nice atmospheric kind of pads layered with piano for how that works in Halley and Sonic SE. But the rest of these you may have installed. But those are the things that I would definitely look for is kind of the application and go through Retrolog. And I think that these host programs, you can see they're not terribly big, will and then the content will all load into the host program. So check out the application, Spectral Layers 1, Halley and Sonic SE. You probably don't have to do the content if you have it already in version 11, but just the instrument and the Verve piano. So if I had to only limit my downloads to those things, that's what I would do going from 11 to 12. All right, so we see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo says he loves all of his Steinberg products, Wavelab, Cubase, and Spectral Layers. Thanks for all the support with all the Google Hangouts. So you're welcome, and glad that you could be a part of the community today. All right, so we see a question from Nick. I think it's Saya. I don't know if it's Saya or Saya. Maybe he could let me know, but I'll say Saya. How can I go back and adjust the input and output MIDI port after creating a touch controller in MIDI control window, MIDI remote? Want to disable output port. So I think that a lot of times once it seems odd to me as well, but once we come over to like a MIDI remote script, let me just come over here and we go to the setup that, you know, we can't really change the defined controller. So I'm not sure what the reasoning is. I haven't found a way to do that. So if we come here, let me just... But it seems like for some reason, once the MIDI input and output has been defined, that it's hard to change. So I'm not sure what the kind of reasoning is behind that. So but I'll make sure to kind of mention that. So let's say if we... But you might be able to export the script, and maybe when you import it, to redefine the script. So that might be a way to get around it. I could test that if you want to email me, Nick. All right, so we have Lars Rubert checking in from Germany, and Jack Shot Records from way north in Canada. So I think he's pretty close to Alaska. So thanks for being on today. All right, so we see Captenergy Music from Pennsylvania on. My chat field just jumped. All right, so we have a question from Langsalot. Is there a way to shuffle, delete a part with one shortcut, not leaving any empty space and pulling back all the events that come after it? So we could do that kind of utilizing the range tool. So let's say if I have this project open here. All right. All right, I'm just going to set all these up real quick here. All right, so if I wanted to just come, what I'll do is, let's say I select a range, and then I think it's Command or Control Shift plus X. We'll just do that. So select what you want to delete with the range tool, Control or Command plus Shift plus X. And then you see that information gets kind of cut over, and you could find a lot more of these kind of range editing tools. So if you go to Edit to Range, and at that time you could just say, okay, we're going to cut time. So Control, Command plus Shift plus the letter X. Okay, so we have a question. When editing vocals with VariAudio, after analyzing the pitch lanes are outside my view, is there a solution to see the clip I'd like to edit? The beginning at the left locator. Okay, so let's go ahead and so I'll just take it to this. Let's come over to VariAudio. So I'll okay. So it says when editing vocals, after analyzing the pitch lanes are outside of my view, is there a solution to see the clip I'd like to edit? So here, if I have everything kind of just broken down. Now let's say let me revert, and I'm just going to cut. And I'm going to create several events for this particular part and see if that changes. Okay, so we have 3 events. So when I come here, let's say I have this selected and I go to my sample editor. We'll go to VariAudio. Okay, so now when I double click here to select these different events, we could see kind of the range automatically show up here. So I'm not sure if you have multiple events or if like let's say if I had another, so if I have another file here, this may not, it's going to be almost look at the file basis. So if we have another recording, you may have to just come over here and reanalyze each of the particular files. So let's say I come and we want to, so I've done my analysis in the VariAudio here. If I double click and we go into the sample editor, I'd have to edit the VariAudio again on this particular segment, and then we could see the different events show up. So a lot of times to kind of, if you have like, which is common in a vocal, if you've done punch-ins and punch-outs where you have, multiple files, a lot of times what can make sense is to select all of the events on the project. And if you go to audio, to bounce selection and replace events, then that will create a new audio file. And now we could double click and do VariAudio across the whole performance. And if you wanted to make a new track version, you could do that as well. So let me know if that's helpful or if I misunderstood. All right, so we see I still have not found out all of the plugins that come with Cubase. I'd like to know them by name and effect. So, like with my Cubase 12 Pro, I don't have, I think I have just about all. So I'll come over here to my VST plugin manager. So, you could just look and see, like all my Steinberg Media Technologies plugins that, come directly with, that come directly with Cubase. And you can see all the instruments. So like here we get, Groove Agent SE, Howling Sonic SE, Pad Shop, Retrolog are the included instruments. Everything except for in this list comes with it. I think we may have like the RevX that comes with the hardware, like in a UR or AXR audio interface. And then I think I may have some other ones that say Yamaha. These Groove Agent Classics here, these come from Yamaha, but everything else is included. And you can find, if you go to the Steinberg website, there's a detailed list of every plugin that's included with it. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg, please help. I have UR22C with the latest update, Windows 10 and Ryzen 5700G, and I have issues in blue screen always because the driver fails, blue screen to death. So can you help? So check to see, on the, I think if we go to, and this is something that's on the Windows side, it's maybe not on the Mac OS side because there's a little more consistency with the hardware. But let's say if we come over here to the DSP mix effects. So one, if you're connecting it to a hub, see if you connect it directly to the computer, connect it to a different USB port if you haven't done that already. But there is settings that could say like use like super speed for USB 3.1 or use a USB 2.0 speed. And I think it might be maybe in the DSP mix effects. So if I want it to, but I don't think it's in in the Mac version, but on some USB controllers, it may not support the super fast transmission. So you could try to toggle that setting. I think it's in the DSP Mix Effect software where you could adjust that, and it might also be in the control panel. So let's see if we come to your studio setup. You may also be able to find it. Yeah, so if you go to the control panel, and then if you get to open config app, see if you can see that you could have the super speed USB 3.1 or high speed USB 2. So try to switch that behavior and see if that makes a difference for you. But make sure that you try that you're using the included cable that comes with the interface as well. That can make a big difference in situations like this as well, if it's kind of trying to do USB 3 over USB 2 cable. But check that setting and see if that makes a difference for you. All right, so we see Cubase 10.5 here. Question is performance meter issues. Meter going crazy and dropouts when I have 20 tracks or more. No plugins yet. 24-bit 48K sample rate. So, I'm not sure if you're running on Mac or PC. And this is for Mr. Morpheus, but one of the things that you could check is just to make sure, like a lot of times, it could be like a video display driver if you're on Windows, and you could check to make sure that that that's not causing it. There's on the Windows, there's a utility called the latency mon. I think it's done by Resplendence, and I'm sure Jazz Dude will be kind enough to actually post a particular link. But also, if you could tell us like what buffer rate or what buffer size that you're using for your audio interface. So if you just go directly to your studio menu to studio setup, try to see if it makes any difference. If when you go to the control panel, if you adjust the buffer rate higher, you could see that. But if you could give us some more information, that would be great. Okay, so we see question. When creating a new project and adding an instrument, I'm not getting any sound. Okay, so let's say I did a new project here. All right, and you could test this with like Halion Sonic SE because it actually has kind of an onboard keyboard. So I'm going to add an instrument track here. Just reread this. So I assume that you're adding a software instrument. And what I want to do is we'll just kind of load up a quick sound here. So just double click. So see if you get sounds when you're playing directly on the keyboard of Halion Sonic SE. You may, if you get a play and you don't have the track monitored or record enabled, you may not have MIDI be sent directly to that particular track. So you could record enable and see your tracks there. So try utilizing Halion Sonic SE just because this has a software keyboard that will trigger the sounds. Not every instrument will do that. So you could use that to see if the instrument is generating sound or if it is a MIDI communication problem. Also, like if we look here, when I hit my MIDI keyboard, we'll see like the little lights go up as I hit my MIDI keyboard, indicating that I have MIDI communication. So make sure that you have the track armed and that the instrument is actually has a preset loaded and is making sound by itself independently of the MIDI communication. So let me know if that helps. All right, so we see Uno Memento wants people to hit the like button. All right, that allows us to continue to offer these live streams. All right, so you just see, hello, I'm having a hard time getting my Arturia Keylab 2.6 to work well with Cubase 12 Pro. What should my settings be in the setup, MIDI ports, etc.? So, you could see whatever device is connected to, generally, I'm not sure if it's a class compliant MIDI driver where you don't need to install a driver, or if you need to install a driver. But if you come directly to your audio, go to your studio setup, and then you could see your MIDI port setup. If you see your Arturia drivers listed here, then Cubase is able to utilize it. So I'm not sure if it's just for communicating for playing sounds from an instrument, or if you wanted to get into the MIDI remote. I know that some of the Arturia stuff works like right out of the box, but here now you could move the knobs in the Arturia if you wanted to. Let's say we come over here and now we click on the plus sign. At this point we could just go directly to the Arturia, and there is some like presets for some of the Arturia. So, and here you should see like the input and output ports, and many MIDI controllers may have multiple input and output ports, one for control, one for playing MIDI, one for transport. So you may have to kind of get that set up, but check to see, again, if you go to your MIDI port setup under studio to studio setup, and you'll see your MIDI port setup. If you see it listed there, then it kind of has everything it needs to for Cubase to use. All right, so we see, so question, hi Greg, when is Cubase 12 going to have a very needed update? The VariAudio bug is really annoying. Even with the workaround, it messes with the preferences. So I know that, generally you can't talk about future stuff, but I know it's actively being worked on. And so you could, so it's being worked on, but I can't really say dates until it's released. So it's probably still going through quality assurance, and so we'll just have to be a little more patient. So we see from Mark Madsen, hello Greg, can I ask a Nuendo video question? You could ask any question you want. So feel free to ask any questions on Nuendo, Wavelab, Cubase, Halligan. So. All right, so we see from Branislav Bain, key command, shortcut window panel also. Let me see if I could find the original question for context for me. Okay, so, and this is originally about adjust my key editing window. It's white, which is fine, but red buttons are also light. So at night, I can hardly see the preferences panel as well. All right, so let me just scroll down. So it says means key command, short window. So like, I guess if we're in kind of the shortcut, let's say our key commands window here, So I don't think that there's a way of changing this. I think that this, but sometimes you could maybe change, depending on your operating system, like you may be able to put it into like a dark mode. So let's see if I just put this into dark mode here, that some things may switch over. Let's see. Yeah, but that still looks white. So I don't know a way of changing the background colors of that. So sorry about that. All right, you see Branislaw Bain is from Toronto, so thanks for joining us. All right, so we just see question, my mouse wheel has buttons assigned for plus and minus for transport, forward and rewind. Mid-session, it stopped working, and nothing I've done will give it back that functionality help. So it probably, what I assume, like when you have, I'm not sure which mouse it is, I have kind of basic mice for my setup, but there's probably maybe a little control panel that will assign what particular, I'm sure that it's probably like when I hit this button, it's like hitting this key on the keyboard where you kind of map the keys to different functions. So I would come to the key commands, and just if you go to transport, here you could see, fast forward, jog left, jog right. You could see the key command. So make sure probably in the control panel for the mouse, you have settings for which keys are actually doing what functions. Like I hit this button on the mouse, it does, it's F11 or it's, shift plus right arrow, whatever. So make sure that those are still lined up with the keyboard shortcuts that you see here. One way to test is if you just click here where you can say type in key, hit the button, and basically what the button will probably do is transmit the keyboard shortcut, and you can see if it's transmitting the keyboard shortcut or not. And then if it's transmitting a key, if you don't see anything pop up here, it could mean that assignment in the control panel for the mouse isn't working or isn't assigned correctly. And then if something shows up here, you could actually then at that point hit select and see what function is actually selected with that particular keyboard shortcut. So I think it's going to be the control panel for the mouse that's maybe lost communication. All right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas, and he's going to be doing a studio session in Dallas, but he wants everyone to hit the like button, and I'm sure he's going to start giving out some of his notoriously wonderful ice cream flavors. All right, and we have Gerson Herrera checking in from the Caribbean, so thanks for joining us. Just out of curiosity, what island you're in the Caribbean? It's always beautiful there. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. Find my spot. Sorry about that. All right, so we see a question from Magno Jenga. Hi, I'm using Cubase 12, but I cannot get the output sound to my computer speakers. I'm using a Windows 11. I delete it, install it again. I still have the same problem. So I don't know if you're running it through an audio interface or if you're running it through like the built-in audio interface of your laptop. So there could be different things. So let's say if I go to my studio setup here, so if it's like the built-in audio, you may have to just come over here and like let's say on the Mac, I'll come over here, I'll switch to built-in audio, and then at this point we could go to the control panel and I could set like which particular device it's being routed out to. So if you have like an HDMI output connected to your monitor, the audio may be routed not through like the 1/8 inch headphone mini jack to the speakers, but it may be routed out through the HDMI connection. So you can go to, on the Windows platform, what you would do is you'd select, ASIO, low level, I think it's, generic low level latency driver. And then at that point, you click on the control panel and you tell it where to route the audio out to. So if you have HDMI monitor hooked up, it may be going out, sending the audio to the output. But if you have an audio interface, generally that's much easier, where you could select the dedicated audio interface on your setup. So, and that way you know exactly kind of where it's going, and Windows isn't involved with the routing of the audio to and from your systems. So maybe clarify that. That would be great. All right, so Branislav Bain just saying recently switched to Cubase, and I'm really impressed. Love some options. We're glad that you can make it. And welcome to the Steinberg family. Okay, so we see Rod Engels. Hi, man. How can I activate 12 Pro? I'm in the version by 30 days. I need to buy it. So as soon as you actually go to, if you go to steinberg.net or go to your dealer, you could get a digital activation code. So let's say if I come over to, you could always just go to, so we have like our 40% off promotion, and you get free partner products as well. So let's say, okay, we go to Cubase, and now as soon as you go to buy Cubase 12, we can say, okay, let's get Cubase Pro 12. And at this point, you could just add to cart, and that will give you the license code so that you could have the full version license running, and it won't time out when the trial version times out. So, or you could get the digital access code from a box in a dealer as well. All right, so we see the Cube says, I really want to buy Yamaha Modi X Plus keyboard, which stands for Motif Plus, and really got to get deep into keyboards functionality, Cubase Pro 12, if you know. And also, can it make new sounds? So I don't have a Modi X Plus, so I don't have that much experience, but you could obviously program sounds. But yeah, sometimes it's easier for me to get products from competitive companies than my own, ironically enough. All right, so we see Sable Winters on the live stream. So great to have you on, Sable. She's from Bay Area. All right, so I have a question. Can you please tell me how to control track lagging? I keep going back and forth. And with quantization, I just can't get it right on the rhythm. So if you could let me know, John, if it's for MIDI or audio that you see lagging. So sometimes when, one quick thing to do, if you have a lot of plugins in your session already, and it seems like it's lagging, like, you hear like a delay as you're recording MIDI, like virtual instruments or audio. try going to, and what you could go to this bottom left-hand corner of the transport called the constrained delay compensation. And what this could do is while you're recording, just simply turn off plugins that cause a good deal of latency. So you could turn those off while you track and then disable it and have all the plugins still resident. So, but if you could let me know if it's MIDI specifically or audio or both, that would be helpful. And if you could just, like, as I get to this question in a couple minutes, you could just say this is about to control track lagging. So have a frame of reference for it. That would be appreciated. All right, so we see AirCub Music just saying I plan to update Cubase 9 to 12. I have a trial version before I buy a license. Like it. So yeah, now is a wonderful time to do that with the promotions of 40% off. All right, so we see a question. Is there an issue with the profile manager? I tried to transfer my settings from my desktop to laptop. Everything defaults back original colors and settings. How can I save everything I customize? So generally, the profile manager does that. So one of the things that the profile manager doesn't carry over that's actually saved within the projects themselves is the colors setting. But all the preferences, all the customized color schemes, all that will be stored. That's kind of independent of the project, but like the colors used in projects. So let's say if I add a number of audio tracks here, like these track colors are going to be saved and transferred over with the particular projects. So all right, so you see a question from Capt Energy Music. Hey, Greg, by the way, just curious, since Steinberg is giving away several plugins, Melodyne, and a few other items right now, I'm assuming it's just a limited partnership, or do you foresee them becoming part of this Steinberg library in the future? Just curious your take. So I think it's primarily just kind of a marketing win-win. We get our customers exposed to their plugins, and their plugins can be, so it's just kind of like a teaser. So I think it's for a limited time during their promotion till October 3rd. So I think it's just like a marketing promotion. So I don't think it's going to be permanent. I don't anticipate that, but I think it's a great way for, a lot of people that have Cubase don't necessarily go out and get a lot of third-party plugins because, they have such a great set included. So it just gets people exposed to other companies. So and that's why we kind of do it as a cross-fertilization marketing tactic. All right, so we see from Helmet says, thanks, Greg. I think I'll have to make a little video and email you to show you the problem. In previous versions, always a clip was visible. I double-clicked on. So, if you want to send me a video, you could email it to me. You could put on like a file sharing and just send a link to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And it's always better if you use something like OBS, which is a free screen capture, as opposed to, I see so many videos people share with me on Facebook with their phone, and it's shaky and totally blurry and you can't see anything, and you only see part of the screen and not the whole screen. So if you get a chance to do a quick capture via OBS, that's always the best method. So. All right, so we see a nice comment from Sable Winters just saying, so Greg, thank you for all you do for us. I'm just glad to be helpful. Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. When I open Cubase 12, I get an error message. Some content cannot be loaded. Hallian Sonic common presets content. I have looked in Steinberg Library Manager and can't find this. Any suggestions? So make sure that when you're doing it, so it may not be like a specific, library that has the same name, but make sure that, you went through when you installed Cubase. I'll just open up the library manager here. All right, so now when I go to my Cubase Pro 12, I would think that it's going to be, make sure that you have this library. So you'll see the Hallian Sonic SE3 content recommended. So that's 3 gigabytes. So make sure that you have this download. Now, some of these other, I think rest of them are just kind of loops. We have the Verve instrument here, which is also requires Hallian Sonic SE. And you'll see that some of them will be, for Retrolog, patch up, but I think it's going to be this, the Hallian Sonic SE3 content. So make sure you have that downloaded and installed. And so make sure that you actually have downloaded that. A lot of people may download the instrument and not the content sets that come with it. So let me know if that helps. All right, wonderful to see Madge Deepers checking in from the UK. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I just see from Manos, is about UR22C, says, Greg, I use super high USB port. So just try to, try to actually switch it to, if you try to switch it to the other speed and just to make sure that is compatible. So if you have the option to switch it to that particular driver, that would be good. All right, wonderful to see Kerwin Young on the live stream. Yeah, and Kerwin had messaged me he was going to be in the DC area, and yeah, so I'm free Friday, maybe like afternoon. If you want to get together, Kerwin, I'll send you a message as well, but just in case I got busy. All right, so we see from Mr. Morpheus says on the continuing on the performance meter issues in Windows, UAD Apollo is my interface. Buffer usually 1024, sometimes higher. So, check to make sure. So you're probably running that. I'm not sure if you're running it as USB or Thunderbolt, but that could also make a difference if the Thunderbolt controller is compatible. But also, check as I think Jazz Dude had posted the link, just a couple of messages up from this, and the time is for the link he posted is 1:40 p.m. Or 40 minutes after the start of the live stream, and it's resplendence.com/latencymon, and see if and that would probably give you an indication if you're having problems with conflict with your audio interface and other components of your system. All right, and we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. All right, so we see a question. If I have two versions of the same controller, like a Korg Nano, can I create two separate MIDI remote scripts, or will they default to the single remote setup? So I think you could have two independent ones because it's based on the MIDI port driver, and each unit would have its own MIDI port driver. So you'd probably see like nano control, like parenthesis 2, or nano control parenthesis 3. So they would function independently. So in Cubase has always been great at, I haven't personally tried it, but I would be like 99% sure that they would function. You could run multiple instances of the same controller, and they would still be independent because they're using different MIDI ports. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. And we have Steve Leeds checking in from Berkeley, California. Probably not far from where Sable is. And we have Matt Elston checking in from London. Thanks for being a loyal attendee. All right, so you see, all right, my chat field jumped. Let me just... Okay, so I think I'm back to where I was. All right, so we just see from Semog Engineer, Mixing and Mastering Engineer, this live stream rocks. So glad you're finding it helpful. All right, so we have, hi Greg, and hello from Israel. I have a Chrono synth from Korg, and I cannot sign it into MIDI remote. Please help. Thanks. So, I'm not sure if you've, created a script. Sometimes if you're not seeing any MIDI messages, make sure that when you go to like studio setup, that you don't have it's set up for the Korg for a Mackie control or generic remote. So, but, once you have kind of a different setup here, we could, so let's say, I'll just edit this and I'll just delete. So, so once we have the actual setup here. So let me just say, okay, well, I want to say, okay, if you wanted to kind of set it up from scratch, you can say, okay, I want this to be Nectar P4. And then select the correct MIDI in and out port. And now once we're here, I can just say, okay, I want this to be knobs, and I'm just going to turn knobs. And that will automatically populate. And at this point, if we wanted to, go to the editor, we could pick which particular functions in Cubase that this is controlling with the mapping assistant. So, we can say this knob is doing like click volume or whatever. You can assign to different functions. So, but if you're not seeing it kind of populate, it's probably being used elsewhere for those MIDI ports for another control. And thanks for joining us, Eli. All right, so we see hi from Texas. Looking for help. In a large orchestral template built using disabled instrument tracks, I've noticed that the CPR file jumps massively in size after a global copy paste and gets slow to save. So I don't have kind of a huge orchestral template set up, but let me just see if let me just open up kind of an orchestral thing and I'll duplicate it a couple times. Okay, so now. All right, so let's say now I have this. So let's say if I wanted to do, so I got lots of tracks now. All right, and I'll just do it even one more time. All right, and one more just for. All right, so we have about 100 tracks playing. So let's say if I want to do. All right, so let's say if I just want to do this, so let me just come to the end here. All right, so just save this. And we'll go ahead and compare the file sizes. And these all have full articulations on each of the tracks. So see, it is pretty, it is much larger. So it could be just dealing with more data. Let's see how many more times. So I copied it, like here I copied 9 times. So, and it's about 9 times the file size, but if you have a video of it, and also if you could let us know like which instruments, some instruments don't really sometimes don't release memory, but that would be helpful. But here it's 4 times, it's 9 times the data since I did, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times the actual original. So I think that kind of makes sense that if it's having that much more data. But But yeah, if you want to send me a quick video of it, like captured on OBS or something like that, I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it. With, and if you have more information as to what libraries you're using. All right, and we have David Griffiths checking in from Wales, and he's hit the like button to make sure this keeps going on. It's a great help. Thanks, Greg, he says. So you're welcome. All right, we see Soren from Sweden. Thanks for being on. All right, we have Michael Graybill checking in from North Dallas. So here's other people from Dallas on the live stream as well. All right, so we see question, which one is better, 32-bit float or 64-bit float on processing precision? So, you know, for a lot of material, it may not make a big difference. So if you're going to do like, you know, surf punk music, you know, it's probably not going to make a big difference. If you were doing like really totally squeaky clean classical edits, you know, or something with like a lot of exposed reverbs, it can make a difference there. Not all third-party plugins are capable of doing 64-bit processing. So, you know, when it first came out, you know, and I've told this story before, I took the same project, and I have a friend who, you know, has like amazing golden ears. You know, he's kind of a world-renowned mastering engineer. His name is Greg Lukens, and he's a blind mastering engineer. And total golden ears. Like he could walk into a room and clap and pretty much give you the dimensions of the room, like within inches in a big room. You know, he's just an amazing person for that. And so I sent the same project and I set it to 32-bit and I mixed down the other one to 64-bit and just gave him a third project. And he's like, okay, these two sound the same, but this one's a little better, but I'm not sure why. And that was the 64-bit precision. So it can make a difference. Try it and see if you hear it, you know. So you should be, you know, so there's no real consequence to doing it. So, but it may not be as apparent on all different styles of music. So wonderful to see Graham Witcher from Royal Wootton Bassett in the UK. We see that that Royal Wootton Bassett became royal a few years ago with approval from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, sadly missed. Yeah, it's been sad to watch all the funeral processions and going on. All right. So I see Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of banana nut ice cream. So thank you very much. It's very generous. All right, so we see from John Shaman, who's having questions, I think, with the MIDI timing. So just out of curiosity, there is a, if you hit Alt or Option K, you'll get this little on-screen keyboard. So one thing to check is if you just kind of plunk notes on this particular keyboard here, if you have the same issue with, you know, if you have the same issues with the keyboard. If you don't have it with this keyboard and you have it, you know, with a controller keyboard with like physical keys, then you know it's going to be something with the MIDI interface that could be causing that. But try recording, John, with this, you know, just put the click track on and record something very simple. So just, you know, come over. All right, so it's you know, we just put on the click track. Sorry, just. and see if that lines up how you expect it. And then we could see if it's going to be an issue with the on-screen MIDI keyboard or with the kind of MIDI timing in general, or if it's just your MIDI controller that's causing it. So if you could let me know of that, John, that'd be great. All right, reading through comments. All right, so we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks for being on the live stream. And Jeff Sabelski from Chico, California. Thanks for being here. Okay, we see some discussion on Omnisphere and some of the other Spectrasonics instruments. All right, so we see follow-up question from Captain Energy Music. Says, thanks, Eric. Just wondering if that would lead you to having to support Melodyne and such. So no, it's just because it's a current marketing promotion doesn't mean that I'm going to be doing Melodyne support. I'm not a Melodyne expert, so... All right, so we see from Tiago, it just says feature request of VariAudio in different tunings. Example, A equals 440, 442, 432 for voices initially recorded in those tunings. So, a lot of times I've kind of done this on other live streams where, someone, you could, like any of the audio that's going to be in a particular voice. And I'll just open up a quick project here. So if you needed to do that, so let's say I'll just rewind this just a bit here. So let's say as we're doing this. So what some people will do is just simply, if I wanted to take this, and we can do fine tune. So if we needed to do this, so like right now I just dropped the pitch by 8 cents on play. So let's say if I just come here.
Oh, I remember the day that we wed. Seems like a long, long time ago.
So often the difference between 8 cents is really, really minor. So so you see a lot of people get hung up on it that they have to make it work to 432. If you need to do that, perhaps offset by 8 cents here, and then you could adjust on the free warp to to the normal scaling, and then it will play back at 430. You could work with different tunings there. All right, so we see Graham Witcher's really liking the Arturia CS80 free plugin. So that comes with the promotion. So make sure you check your My Steinberg account online, and you'll see your vouchers there. All right, so we see a question from John. I use Apollo Twin. I can never switch audio in Cubase 12 while in a project. The only way I could do that is to have to switch before opening a project. Otherwise, it will freeze. All right, so, I'm not sure if it's switching audio here or if it's when you go to the studio setup and if you're switching the interface here, like an audio system. But generally, you should be able to do that without the interface freezing. So maybe it's something with the Apollo Twin drivers, but it sounds like it. You should be able to kind of freely switch audio interfaces without issues. All right. Wow. We see Pablo on the live stream. It's been a while. So Pablo from Galicia, España. So great to see you, Pablo. We have the whole Hot Mess contingent on. So wonderful that you could make it. Everyone will be happy that Pablo is back. All right. All right. And he said his gig today was postponed because of bad weather. So I'm sorry you're not doing your gig, but we're happy that you're here. All right, my chat field jumped, so I think I'm back to where I was. So Gareth has an official announcement. All 4 Hot Mess members are here. All right, so a question from Mopman. Hi, Greg. I have some older projects in Cubase 7 that I'd like to import into Cubase 12 to work on. Do you have any projects on hand from an older version of Cubase to see exactly how this is done? So, you could go back to Cubase SX1 and open up projects. So let me see. I think if I go... Yeah, here's Feel Good from Cubase 7. So it's literally just opening up the project right here. And that's all you had to do. So it's the same file format, so you don't have to do any importing. So from Cubase SX1, released in 2001, 2002, those will just simply import open directly without having to do anything special. Okay, so we see a question from Tommy C. So great to see you on the live stream from Florida. Says, question, I have a problem. I can't get the audio work tool to move objects without the back screen moving. Any help? Thanks. All right, so it could be, I assume this is the audio warp tool, but let me just... Okay, so, there's different modes for the audio warp tool. So, if we come here, we could choose to warp the grid. So if it's on warp grid, what this does is it moves our measures to automatically fit kind of this space. But if we're on, so if we go to our warp and choose to do a free warp, at this point, if we have warp markers enabled, what we could do is at this point, just come over here. And now we need to make sure that we have kind of the warp marker, like a warp marker before and after. And then once we do that, we could stretch to make that fit. But if I don't have let's say I'm here kind of at the end and I move this marker, this warp, it'll kind of move everything else. But we could just come over and just place another warp marker, and then it's only going to move to there. Now, as we do this also, one of the things that we could do is just take the hit points. And anytime that an audio file is recorded into Cubase, it'll have hit points. And if I wanted to take the hit points and convert those into warp markers to kind of mitigate this, if we go to our real-time processing, we can say create warp markers from hit points. And now at that point, anytime that there was a rhythmically significant thing to create a hit point, that will translate into a marker so that they will automatically be populated so that we could adjust easier. So let me know if that's helpful and kind of what you're looking to do, or if I completely misunderstood. So. All right, so we see Michelle Staten from Colorado, from Denver, Colorado, says, I'm new to Cubase. Where's the best place for me to start? Just learn as you kind of work. First off, welcome to being in the Steinberg family and welcome to the live stream. So, being here in the live stream, you could ask any question that you want and be able to kind of get stuff, and get your questions answered. So being on the live stream is a great place to start, but figure out exactly what you want to do. Think of it as approaching a new instrument. Like you don't, sit down at the piano for the first time and start playing Chopin. You have to get some of the fundamentals right. So, fortunately there's lots and lots of, tutorials available for Cubase on how to get started. If you have any particular questions, you could ask free, you could just ask in the live stream here and you could get your particular questions answered. So, it's such a great time of having so much information available, and just since kind of the COVID started, we're over 20,000 questions. I think this is our 241st live stream or something like that. So, we just sit here and answer people's questions. But if, just figure out, learn how to do something simple every day, like a little lesson. Like there's Nari Soul, who's like an amazing piano player. She has like this amazing, video series on YouTube, and AHRE Soul, SOL, and she just, when I was teaching her Cubase kind of remotely, Hans Zimmer kind of reached out and wanted me to get her up to speed on Cubase, and she just had like, this is my objective today. I'm going to learn MIDI editing. I'm going to learn how to create a basic drum beat. I'm going to learn how to copy stuff, and just kind of do it very kind of like you were learning an instrument. But when in doubt, these will, play, record. I right click, I have tools. So if I want to cut a part, if I want to erase it, you could just do these things very simply, and have the confidence that when you have something that's very complex, that Cubase will be able to do it, but it may not be just hitting you in the face, kind of hindering your creativity. So, but welcome to starting Cubase, and we hope to see you on many more live streams. And if you have any particular questions, please feel free to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. And you could also check out the Cubase Nation Discord, as I mentioned at the top. And if you go to cubaseindex.com, if you have questions, you could probably just type a question there and see a video from the live streams. All right, so we see from Young Metro, is there any way to make the piano roll so that if I click one time on the mouse, I create a note, and if I click right, I can delete a note? All right, so So, once I have the note selected here, so, there's different tools. So it's hard sometimes to, if often people would choose to, select events with the selection tool. But if you wanted to just draw notes in, just come right here to our left, just by clicking on the drawing tool, and you could draw in notes. Or if you wanted to erase, just with the erase tool. So if you wanted to now come over here, you can see the eraser tool. Another thing that you could do is just double click, and there's a setting by default. So if I turn this option off here, so that when I double click, that we could just erase notes by double clicking. But I think that is a kind of a sensible solution, because a lot of times you may want to just draw a note in, and then if you wanted to switch between the tools, you could use the numbers on your computer keyboard. But if you are in the drawing tool here, you could now, if I hit 1, that would take me to my object selection tool. 2 would be, so I could just, 2 is glue, 3 is scissors, so 4 is erase. So I could just hit 1 and 4, and you could change those keyboard shortcuts, but you could also just double click. But a lot of times, just select a tool. So there isn't a way to just, switch back and forth, because there's so much context sensitive options based on what is selected. So, and being able to kind of select the tools there to switch back and forth, but you could do it quite easily. All right, so just reading through comments. All right, so we see from Michael Graybill that he's usually writing about 9,000 mostly empty measures. One thing that could also help, depending on if your plugins support it, is if you come over, like with VST3 plugins, if you go to preferences, something that may help with this is if you go to preferences to VST plugins. I'm just going to switch my mode back here. So let's say we go to VST plugins. There is a suspend VST3 plugin processing when no signals are present. That might help also. But, if you have, I'm not sure how much memory you have in your system, but that could always help as well. All right, so we just see a question. Is there a way to save an expression map so that all new projects can access it? So once you have an expression map, so let's say if we go to our expression map setup, all right, and I'll just do new. All right, and then I'm just going to hit save. Okay, and I'll just put this in my desktop. Okay, I go to a new project. And now we will come over to, let's say, our editor. And let's go to our expression map. So at this point, we'll go to the expression map setup and hit load. So once you have it saved, that could be used in any other project. And what a lot of people do is save that as part of their template so that every time they wanted to go to a particular instrument with a particular expression map loaded up, it's kind of automatically recalled with the template. Okay, so we see from Tommy C just saying, sorry, I meant to say my audio warp tool, for some reason the background moves and not the audio. So again, we'll just show that one more time. So if I'm in my audio warp and I have it set to warp grid, now the background moves here. But if we are in free warp, now we can move just the event. So just make sure you're in the right mode. So, and again, if we switch to warp grid, now the background moves. So probably just get into the right mode between the different warping there. So we see from Keith Young, question. Hello, Greg. Does Cubase actually use the M1 chip fully, or is it using Apple Rosetta's software? Thank you. So all of the tools that come with Cubase natively work on the M1 chip, but there's a lot of third-party plugins that need to be run under Rosetta. But everything in Cubase runs fully on M1 and is M1 native. All right, so we see from Mark Westbridge, this nice comment. Hi, Greg. Thank you. You're amazing. So glad to help. See Jeff Sabelski just saying he guesses he's not in line for the Queen anymore. So. All right, so we see, hi Greg, how to insert time or beats in ruler track to affect all instrument tracks without changing automation, adjustment, modulation, etc. Okay, so let's say if I come here, let's say I have all my different tracks, and I'll just draw in some automation. So if we wanted to insert kind of like a space and not have everything kind of messed up. So what I'm going to do is just hold down Control and Shift and just go to the top and use my range tool. So what I want to do is I selected the range, and now we go to Edit menu to Range, and we'll just say Insert Time, I think is what we want. Insert Silence. So we watch the automation here. So we'll say insert silence. It all gets kind of bumped over to the right. So select the range of the time with the range tool, and then come right over here and just say insert silence. And it's Command Shift or Control plus Shift and the letter E. And that will just kind of nudge everything over with its automation, the tempos, everything just like that. But make sure that you do kind of a global selection. So we could select the range here. And if we use the range tool, and I'm using the combined, so I'm at the top. So hold down Control or Command plus Shift. That will globally select everything in the range. And then Command or Control plus Shift plus the letter E. And then that will just simply insert that space and move everything over to the right without messing up the automation. Okay, just reading through questions here. So we see RZ Kills just saying, hello, Option plus K. Just learned something new here. Thanks. So it's always a good one. All right, we see Gareth is going to sort out dinner with his family. All right. My chat field just jumped again on me. Sorry. All right, so I think I'm back to where I was. Sorry about that. All right, so we see, hello, question. Which Steinberg products on the new license system, and any chance that Spectral Layers Pro 8 will be on the new system, or I need to upgrade to version 9? So with Spectral Layers, it's going to be version 9 that's going to be on the new licensing system, so you'll need to update to version 9 for that. I think it's a pretty inexpensive update for that and great new features. But so, yeah, they're not, on very rare occasion or, if it'll basically be the next generation that will incorporate the new licensing scheme. So you'll need, so Spectral Layers Pro 9 will, but Spectral Layers Pro 8 will still work on the previous e-licenser. So we see from John Costigan, just says, hello, Greg. I plan on updating to Cubase 12 from Cubase 11.042 Windows 10. Should I just download the entire list in the download manager or limit the download in some way? Thank you. Stay well. So if you have everything installed from 11, then, I would just do, like the plugin updates and the application and the Verve. If you didn't take advantage of all the other content, then at that point, I would download the other stuff as well. So, but make sure you do the instruments because there were like changes. I know you're on Windows 10, but there's some changes mostly for M1, native on the plugins. But at that point, there were some other minor things. You need the latest version to run the Verve. But most of the content sets are going to be the same, the different sample sets from 11 to 12. So if you have those installed already, you don't need to download them again. All right, wonderful to see David Reuter and Kristen Precy from Nashville, from Big Tent Productions. Congratulations on getting your song in Australia to be released. Saw that on Facebook. I was very happy to see that. See Jeff Sabelski just saying 8 cents for an oboist can be a nightmare. Violinists in old opera coloraturas don't care. So that's a good point. Okay, so we see question, why do my Cubase output red button default to -18 when I control plus click? All right, so I assume it's going to be the transport in the directly here. So I think it's control click will set it to the value that's set. So it could be just I'm not sure if there's a default value or if we come here, you know, if you wanted to set this, so if we go to, you know, I think it's Alt or Control click here, we could set new reference levels. So let me know if that's the red button that you're talking about. So I don't think it defaults anywhere. So, but you might have control clicked and set a reference level here. But I'm just going to reread the question, make sure I'm not misunderstanding. So say if I just come here, control click, so that, you know, so if you control click, it's probably just set by this reference level. So if you just want to control click to immediately go to your reference level, but you could set the reference level to different values here. So just by holding down Alt or Option plus click. So now when I control click, it'll go to my my monitoring reference level. See, R.R. Randalls just says, thank you for answering my question on Friday. It was very helpful. Great service you're providing for the Cubase community. So I'm glad it helped. All right, so I see from Benny, do you see me? Greg doesn't see me. I send you an email, Greg. So let me see if I have the email that's come in. Sorry about that. So maybe I didn't see the question. Okay, so you see, all right, so Benny's question, when I turn an audio file into MIDI file, not all notes come along. It happens when I'm working on a bass track. It's clean tones on the bass track. Can you know what settings to use? All right, so let's say I want to take this bass part. Let me just revert this and we'll convert it to MIDI. Thanks for sending the email. And once again, if you learn something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so let's take a look at. All right, so I'm going to convert this into MIDI and we'll see how it translates over. All right, so, you know, one of the things is All right, so sometimes you may have to kind of go over here and like break up and do like some different segments. So I may say, okay, when I'm here, I'm just going to hold down. So we see kind of the waveform. So I will just hold down my, sorry, just get the rate. Just make this a little. All right, so so I kind of could break apart some of the different segments here. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this into MIDI. So I will come over and we'll go to functions and we'll say extract MIDI. So pay attention also if you wanted to have pitch bend data or not. So I'll just create a new MIDI track. And I'll open up just a quick VST instrument. Right, and let me just see if here I'll just create a new, just add an instrument track here and I'll assign it to that. Hang on. All right, I'll just add an instrument track first and I'll load up the. All right, before I do this, I'm gonna make sure that that track is selected. Let me mute my chord track. And I'll just knock this up an octave. So it seems to work with the original, so. So that's both of them together. So it seems to work pretty well, but check some of the segments also, and within the VariAudio editor, and see if those kind of make sense. So sometimes as we're doing the VariAudio editing, you may have to just say, okay, this note just kind of drifted down, so let me take this note and move it up and tie those two notes together. So you could do a little cleaning up here just on like ends of notes that maybe drift in and out, but it seemed to work pretty well for me. Thanks for sending the email, Benny. All right, so we see, hi Greg, wondering if there's a way to save my layout so that each project I open would open with the bottom zone on the mixer tab. Each project I open seems to always open an editor tab. So I think that so let's say if I come over here, I'll revert this. All right, I'll just... So let's say I have my fun IT department at work. All right, so let's say I have this project saved with the mixer. All right, so as I save, all right, so let's say if I switch this to chord pads, all right, and I'm going to close the project. So it could be that maybe you have like an event that's selected, but it looks like it's saved and retained the settings. So let me just save this. So I'll save with the VariAudio in the lower zone. I'll close it. And we open it again. See what shows up. So I don't have anything selected, but then when I select the channel, so it seems like it saves whatever setting was in the lower zone area when you save the project. Okay, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Can Steinberg change the way you can set a loop range with the pencil tool? When I open a loop range is set, you can draw a new one over an existing range. Okay, so let's do new project, or let's just go to. So I'm not sure if this is in the sample editor in the media bay or on the project window. But let's take a look. All right, so let's say if I'm in media bay in a right-hand zone. All right, so I just kind of put a loop there. All right, so I just kind of went with the pencil tool. All right. Okay, so it says when a loop range is set, you can't draw a new one over the existing range. So I think once we have a selection, I think the intention is that we could adjust the handles here. And then if you go outside, so within a range we could choose where to start, but if we wanted to make it longer or shorter, we could just select outside. And then we could kind of truncate like that. So I can see it kind of going either way, but I'll pass that along. But let me know if it's not in the Media Bay preview and somewhere else in the program. All right, so we have from Ronan Sekel Music. All right, so it says I have two questions. Is there a way to edit keyboard arranger style file on Cubase .stl, etc.? So there's not a direct like arranger style import. So most people would just simply take like a standard MIDI file, but it's not going to import like, I'm assuming this is like a keyboard arranger, kind of like a Genos or a Tyros. So Cubase doesn't import those files. I think that those are kind of proprietary to the particular keyboards. And maybe you could change that and import it back in, but there's no, so it would have to be through like a standard MIDI file and not a .stl. Sorry about that. Okay, another question. Please explain what is MIDI export as type 0? All right, so there are two different standard MIDI type MIDI file formats. So we go to export and we choose our MIDI file. We could have, I'll just show it, I can show it a little easier in the preferences. So when we go to our preferences here, we'll see when we go to export MIDI file. So we could export it as type 0 and type 1. So if you have older keyboard workstations, let's say an older hardware sequencer, think Roland MC505, think Alesis MMT8, the brother hardware sequencer. Those didn't like to see multiple tracks of MIDI. They wanted everything to be in one single track so that they could load up. So, and this seems counterintuitive at first, but a Type 0 MIDI file combines all of the tracks, all of the MIDI tracks into one single file that can then be split up. And it's often more for compatibility with legacy hardware, load up a floppy disk into a sequencer type of hardware sequencers. And Type 1, which is often used between different computers, would allow multiple tracks to be separated. So Type 0 MIDI files are kind of more attuned and better suited for hardware sequencers, where everything needs to be on one track, where they can't separate. And we have Type 1 where all the different tracks can be separated. So that's really the difference between them. All right, we see Uno Memento from Finland says he would have a Steinberg beer. So. So we just see a question. Hi, any way to see inserts and sends from the bottom pane mixer without having to open full mixer F3? So yes, we could do that. So once we have everything kind of set up in the mixer here, so say. So we go to the mixer, I can see the faders. If I click on this button here, I can see all my inserts. And this button, I can see all my sends. So you can see my faders and channel settings. So there are inserts and sends. So just click right there and you can toggle between the three different views. So let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so we have a question. Is there any way to synchronize the tools chosen between the main and lower view? Like when I work in MIDI in the lower part and select the cut hand stays in the main zone. Thanks. So they kind of function independently, which, I've seen the request before sometimes, but I think if I wouldn't necessarily want, if we had a tool that was selected here, like my comp tool is selected here and I go to the lower zone editor, if that tool isn't available in this editor, I think it makes sense to have these be independent. For the most part, they do use the same keyboard shortcuts to access them. But and sometimes, I know there's situations where you may just kind of go back and forth, but you probably want, for the most part, to have, I don't want a tool, the last tool that I'm using here, to automatically be selected here because it may not, be the same, they have different tools as well. So I think that makes sense to have them be independent between. And one quick way, that a lot of people don't know, let's say if you're in a tool here and you want to quickly get back to like the object selection tool, if you just tap with the right mouse button. So if I'm in this tool and tap with the right mouse button, that will take me back to the selection tool. So if you wanted to just do that quickly, so if I'm in my warping tool and I tap I could just immediately go and have it revert directly back to the object selection tool. Okay, so we see, hello there, I'm here again. Is it possible, question, to grab samples from Cubase when building a song, snare times, kick, etc., and how, and options? So if you wanted to, like, kind of build samples easily, so let's say if I just wanted to do that, so I'm not sure where you want to grab it from. If you want to grab it from, we could grab these from, the samples directly from our project. And if we wanted to, drag these directly over to a sampler track, we could do that. We could also, if we wanted to use something like Groove Agent, we could do some grabbing of samples there as well. So say if I wanted to take an audio recording and, grab a kick and snare. So let's say I have Groove Agent here open. So I will open this, and let's say I just want to clear the kit. So I say, okay, these 3 kicks here were great. I'm going to just zoom in. So, this way what I could do is just drag it directly to a pad. So I could just take all 3 of those samples and drag it. So let's say, okay, now I want it snare. So we see my snare come in. So I just want to take my snare hit and drag that to a pad. That we could just take like little portions. So just grab the range tool and drag and drop. And then you could just come right over there and just trigger different samples like that. So let me know if that's what you mean by grabbing samples. So then you could do it grab it into Groove Agent, play it, or grab it to a sampler track. So if you want to do like multiple drums, Groove Agent's really well suited for that. See, Jeff Sabelski is just saying Glenn Gould did not need Cubase, but I do. But just think of what he could have done with Cubase. Think how many like amazing pieces Bach that we just don't know because Bach couldn't write him down fast enough. Right, my chat field jumped on me, so. Okay, so I think I'm back in the neighborhood. So, all right, so we see a question. Is it possible to browse instruments and effects alphabetically, not by category or vendor? So let's go to our VST plugin manager. Okay, so we have by category or vendor here. So if I wanted to do this, I would just do a new collection. So I'll just say, let's go to empty. All right, and we'll say alphabet. All right, and then I'm just going to select like my plugins here and drag them over. And then everything could be alphabetized just like that. So as soon as we want to go to our plugins, I can now come over. Let's get to inserts. And now we can see all the plugins alphabetized just like that. I'm going to switch it back to my default view. All right, so we see from Young Metro question. I switched recently to Cubase for recording purposes, and I love it when recording and mixing workflow is so efficient and intuitive. So thanks for switching, and welcome to being part of the Steinberg family. We hope to see you on many more live streams, and feel free to ask any questions that you run into. All right, so we have a question about the Midi editor. Is it possible to have ramp instead of step when it comes to modulation and expression CC edit? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so let's say I have different... All right, so I'm just going to draw in some modulation here. Okay. I'll make this nice and obnoxiously big. All right, so, you know, there's different modes that we could use. So let's say, so let's come right over here to this little drop-down menu. And then, so this little drop-down menu here, it's going to be subtle. And then I think that we could say type of new controller that we could switch between step. So like as we would enter in data, it would just step, or we could choose for it to ramp. So now if I put in a CC data here, it's going to ramp as opposed to step. So try that. So once again, this little triangle here, type of new controller events, step or ramp. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you guys have learned something new, make sure that you do hit the like button. All right, you see Madge Deepers has to drop off, but she learned so much and we'll have to relook at some parts, and we'll see her next time. Thanks for joining us. Okay, reading through. See Jeff Sabelski just commenting on Ramsey Lewis passing away. So yeah, Sad to read of that. Okay, so we see Nick is able to join us after doing some ADR work. Glad you can make it, Nick. All right, just kind of reading through comments. All right, so we have Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset, UK. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you on. Okay, still see Michael Pierce has joined us back. All right. Okay, reading through comments. Just all right, so we see I think it's a question. I've need using Cubase for about 20 years now. Since I have Cubase 12, I have lots of bugs. Basically, every time I open a project, Cubase will shut off. Also, some plugins. Do you have any answers? So if you could let us know, this is from Yuri Kleinman, Mouth Party. If you could let us know if you're on Mac or PC. So sometimes with Cubase 12, if you're on Mac, there's a lot of stuff that may be not working if it's not M1 compatible. So, so if you have an Apple M1 processor, an Apple Silicon processor, those, a lot of third-party plugins may not be working with that. But I would try to, it's probably going to be some plugins that aren't going to be working well. But if you could, and if you could figure it out, maybe take a project and choose to do the import. Go to a new project that you're trying to open up and import tracks from project and select the particular project here, and then import several tracks at a time and see if those load and play back correctly as expected, and see if their plugins load up, import more tracks, disable, and then as we do this, you could probably isolate it to kind of a plugin that's misbehaving. All right, so just see question. Is there a macro toolbar? So if you want to create macros, you do it from within the key commands. So we would come over here, go to edit key commands, and then you'll see the first time you may have to say show macros, and then you're able to come over here and build macros from within the key command area. And to then trigger the macros, you go to edit to macros, and you could see I have probably more macros than a lot of people that I've kind of built on live streams. So you could select the macros there. right. Thanks, Jazz Dude, for your vigilant moderation here. All right, so we see from Ben Billman, great, as always, you answered my question about the step ramp MIDI edit. Thanks, Greg. All right. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. Oh, we'll see if there's any that kind of sneak in. If not, we will go to some more of questions that we had a couple of questions that were submitted in advance. All right, so let me sneak over to those. And again, if you learn something new, make sure that you do hit the like button. All right, we see there's 126 likes. Thank you very much. All right, so we had a question is how to do vocal chops in the sampler track. See if I have this project still on my recent list. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so a lot of times, you know, what people will use kind of vocal chops for is maybe a singer is there and they're just kind of improvising, trying out different ideas. So let's say if we come here.
No time to hesitate. No time to.
So let's say they just recorded a bunch of ad lib ideas.
You wanna have it, you can get enough.
So let's just say we're taking different ideas here.
Baby. Let's make it work. Just get it on. What are you waiting for?
All right. So what we could do is if we wanted to do vocal chops, you know, we can come over here and just kind of create slices. So I have this in kind of like an A-B section. So I just kind of created slices and we could drop, you know, slices in manually if we wanted to. So if we just say, okay, let's just manually put in a slice. So I think if we hold down, like, you know, if we just hold down Alt and click, we could just kind of come here and just kind of drop in different slices. So if I wanted to just take like improvised random ideas and kind of maybe, you know, come up with different, different pattern. I can now just trigger different notes here.
Baby, baby, can enough, baby, have done enough, baby.
So you could do like
done enough, baby. Let's hesitate. Don't hesitate. Can enough. Don't hesitate. Enough.
So you could just take like just different little samples and just play different MIDI notes.
Don't hesitate enough, baby.
So at this point, you could just kind of come over here and just randomly play different MIDI notes and come up with new melodies and new songwriting ideas. So a lot of times if you watch, you know, people like Ian Kirkpatrick and how they kind of work, they'll, you know, just kind of take these ideas and chop up samples, but you could just try different ideas very fast using the sampler track and just putting it into slice mode. And I could just have my original sample here, and then when it's in slice mode, and I just have this as an A-B, you know.
No hesitate. No time to can have been enough.
So you could do stuff like that and come up with different ideas that you may have not have thought of creating otherwise. So it's a great little use of the sampler track. Okay, so another question. Hi, Greg. I've always had Zoom full on my number one function knob on my CC121 controller. It used to let me zoom in and out the whole song in a project window, and when a sample editor opened the full Midi and audio events, that is selected. But now when I open an audio event in the sample editor and press zoom full, it zooms out the full length that is set in the project setup window. So the waveform gets very small. This does not happen in MIDI events where the full event comes out correctly. Any way to fix this? Okay, so let's say I will come over here. Let's take a look at my sample editor. All right, so let's say I'll just put this in definition mode. So, all right, so if I double click, let's say I go to my sample editor, one of the things that you could do is that there's global zoom and clip-based zoom. So let's say I want to have this. So I look at my project here, and I have zoom full set up on my particular controller, so my CC121. So I go to my studio setup just to show. We'll go to my Steinberg CC121, and here I have function 1 to go to zoom full. So if I'm on my project window, now that will zoom full to wherever we're at so we can see all the events on the project. So here, I think what we want to do in the sample editor is a clip-based zoom. So now if the sample editor is completely zoomed in, I can hit the zoom full button, and then we'll see kind of everything laid out for us. So if I, again, am zoomed in and then just hit the zoom full. So try to, instead of having this set to global zoom or auto zoom to event, try to set this to clip-based zoom in version 12. And I think that will function the way you expect it to. Then that was some of the new enhancements with the sample editor, so that, if we wanted to set this to like clip-based zoom, that and if I was zoomed in here and I go to this track and I was zoomed in here, that when I go back to my different tracks, that they could maintain kind of their zoom settings. So all right, so I had a question. First of all, thanks for all the great live streams you do every week. The archive of videos and the ability to ask questions has made my Cubase learning journey so much easier. I know you have covered latency compensation button in Cubase's main view bottom left corner, and I feel confident I understand when to enable or disable it and how it turns off high latency plugins and provides more accurate timing when recording audio. There's another audio latency compensation button on a track level too. This one was hidden for me, but once displayed via track setup, it was already enabled by default. I couldn't find information on it in the manual, but I experimented with it, and I think it is for MIDI recording from one MIDI track to another, but I'm not sure about the use case of when to keep it on or off. When recording the MIDI output from Groove Agent or Reason VST MIDI player to another MIDI track live, all the notes are delayed when the track's level ASIO comp button is enabled. When the track level ASIO comp button is off for Groove Agent, Reason track, and the MIDI track, recording the notes, then all the notes align perfectly on the grid. The problem is solved. My question is, if I'm taking input to a MIDI track from any other MIDI source, should I always disable the track level ASIO comp button during recording or playing through to an external device? It seems a MIDI track or MIDI instrument track needs to have this off to take input accurately. Is this true? So I think the intention, and we see this on instrument tracks. So let's say if I add an instrument track, that we come over here, and if we go, and this is, so we'll go to our track control settings, and we'll see that we have the ASIO latency compensation, so we can add that to the button, to the controls here. So we see this here. So I think that the intention of this is if I'm just doing MIDI on one track And, if I'm recording onto this one particular track, and this track has, let's say I have multi-band compressors or like pitch correction software, stuff that takes processing, but I don't want to necessarily disable all of my processing on my master chain, that we're able to just do the latency compensation on an individual track basis. So I think that's the intention of it. So if you wanted to still have the sound of the compression going on, that's maybe adding some compression or adding some latency into the system, this way we could just simply bypass latent plugins only on this one particular track. So I think that's the intention of it. All right, so we have a question. It's been a while since I used my virtual instrument, the Grand, and today I experienced dropout notes while playing it. Notes held down were not sustaining and getting cut off while I was holding down the keys. It didn't start off like this, only started after an hour or so of playing. Have any idea what's causing this and how to keep it from occurring? So one of the things that you could do... let's just see if I think I have it in. All right. So when we come over here, so let's say, we have. One of the things that I would try, generally it could be that you might have to add, and let's see if we go to the options. It could be if we go to the settings, being able to load more of the samples into RAM may help. But there's also kind of a RAM save mode. So let's say as I'm playing back the project here, and I have RAM save turned on, it's actually, as we play through this project, it'll figure out what velocities, what samples, what notes are playing, and it could unload the notes that aren't being used. So, you'd play it through like the whole project, and then afterwards it could unload the samples that aren't being used, because, samples that are being used versus samples that aren't being used are still taking processing power and memory away. So I would try to maybe set the settings here for the buffer, for how much is loaded from disk versus RAM, and maybe err it on the side of RAM unless you have, 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes of RAM. So if you have 16, 32 gigs, I would maybe, just, have it utilize more RAM, and also try to turn on the RAM save and play through the function as well. Play through the project, and that could free up a lot of resources. All right, so let's jump back to our live questions. Thanks again for all the great questions that people have asked. Let me just jump back. See, we're at 130 likes. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you do hit the like button. All right, we see our bot is back. We had a couple of nice weeks. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. Thanks for joining us. And we see Got Yours also just saying you could do vocal chops in Groove Agent and have different effects and multi-outs and stuff as well. So, yeah. Okay. So we see a question from Roger Cabo. Any chance to use the Nuendo randomizer in Cubase? I like to make tiny pitch and formant changes to hi-hats and percussion to get more realistic variations. So currently it's kind of fixed for Nuendo. So, but there's probably, so if you're doing it, so there isn't necessarily an equivalent for it, in Cubase, but I'll pass it along as kind of a creative mixing tool option. Okay, so I just see from Ali M, it says on the sampler vocal chop subject, I have an issue whereby after saving a project and reopening, the playback is not synced as it was before. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, so I'll just come here to the vocal chop. I'll activate the project. All right, and I'm just going to drag this slice. We'll just
No time to hesitate, it's all been done.
all right.
You wanna have it, you can't get enough. Let's get it going, baby. Let's make it work.
All right, so I'll save this. So I just kind of dragged it out, and we have kind of our MIDI file that's been created.
No time to hesitate, it's all been done. You wanna have it, you can't get enough. Let's get it going, baby. Let's make it work.
Okay, so I'll save this project. All right, and I'll go ahead and open it again. All right, and let's go ahead and listen to it.
No time to hesitate, it's all been done. You wanna have it, you can't get enough. Let's get it going, baby. Let's make it work.
All right, so it seemed to be the same to me, but if you have any particular projects, I think it's from Got Your, just or it's from Ali M. So, but it seemed to work on recalling it. All right, so just see a question. Greg, what mic are you using currently? So I'm using an AKG D5. So I guess it's like their version of a SM58. So it's just a handheld dynamic mic. So just see, thanks. So I find that deselecting audio warp in sync, the re-enabling works, and it says, sure, it worked on your live. So I'm a healer for music computers. So. All right, so I think I'm at the end of the questions. We'll see if there's any more that kind of sneak in. All right. So we see DCA Mitch. I think it's, sorry, I have a small font. So, or D Karmic 00. All right. All right, you see Agent K and Jazz Dude, or Agent K has been just vigilant with moderation today. Appreciate it. Agent K is fast. All right, we'll see if there's more questions that come in. If not, we can wrap up a little early. And for those who are kind of new to the live stream, we do this every Tuesday and Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So we'll be doing our next one on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. And if you need to send questions in advance, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, we'll see if more questions come in. If not, we could wrap up a little early. I'll be able to meet my son at the bus stop. But if there's more questions, be happy to answer them. All right, so we see Michael Pierce will try to have a video-based question for Friday, so that'd be great. Nick wishes everyone a great week. And he's looking forward to seeing people on Friday. Michael Pierce just saying thanks for all the time you give us, Greg. So you're welcome. Just happy to help people out. So we see from Ali M. Fabulous Baker Boys, my son, your son is important. So yeah, I try to make a lot of time for him, and we have a lot of fun. So he'll be happy if I get to pick him up at the bus stop. But we'll see if there's more questions. If not, my wife could go meet him. I guess everyone's getting so good with Cubase that we don't have as many questions. So that's great. Okay, so with that, I guess we will go ahead and wrap up. We'll see everyone again on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And thanks for all the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone has learned some great tips and tricks, and I look forward to learning from your questions on this upcoming Friday. So, okay, so just see a quick question. What plug-in chain are you using on your mic track? So my mic is going directly into a Yamaha MW12 CX mixer, and it's set flat with no compression. So no fancy plug-in chain, just microphone into mixer into OBS for the live stream. So. Okay, so we just see a question. If I want to create 1/8-inch slices across an audio or MIDI event for at least 2 bars, what is a fast way to do that? All right, so let's say I have 2 bars here. And I'm going to just set my snap here, and we'll say I want this to be use quantize. And for my quantize value, I want to choose 1/8 notes. Then I'm going to grab the scissors tool, and let's say this is 2 events long. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and split So if I do this I could split it into 2 different segments. But if I wanted to split like at 1/8 notes across the events, just hold down the Alt or Option key. And now as I split, each of these will automatically be split across as 1/8 notes. And you can do that on Midi, on audio events in the same exact way. You see Spike Williams is awarding himself a tardy note, so no problem. You don't have to worry about it. We're just glad you made it. So if you're tardy, your punishment for being tardy is you have to hit the like button. So okay, we'll see if there's any last minute questions that sneak in. Let's see, Gerald saying if we're running out of Cubase questions, maybe it's time for that full Groove Agent demo. Yeah, so I'll try to get that prepared. I'll have to come up with kind of a master outline to show everything for Groove Agent. So that's a good point. Okay, so from RR Randall, we have, could you demonstrate syncing a recording not using the metronome to the tempo track? Okay, so I'm not sure if you want to, so we could do kind of 2 different approaches. Hang on just 1 second. Jazz Dude and Agent K, they're fast. All right, so let's say we have a recording that's not synced to the tempo. So what I'm going to do is select the event, and I can do this for multiple events or just select like the drums and go to tempo detection, analyze, and then we could do maybe some little tweaks like an offbeat correction. So if I wanted something to sync to this, all you'd have to do is grab a loop. And say I want to drag that loop in, and I'm going to place this loop into musical mode. So now this is synchronizing. So this loop is now following the tempo of this. If we wanted to take this tempo and correct it, we would go to Audio, to Advanced, and we could do this for multiple tracks or a single track and say Set Definition from Tempo. And now if I just turn the tempo off, we can now have both tracks playing back at 100 beats a minute. Or if I want it to be faster, I want it to be steady. So that's how we could do it. All right, so I think that we will wrap up, and we'll see everyone on starting on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. And we look forward to seeing everyone back. And again, if you learned a new tip or trick or showed up late, and you have to, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll see everyone again on Friday. Thank you.